few months back, I made a video that you all seem to enjoy, and I really liked making it, and that was ranking every action roguelike I've played with over like 40 games in it, starting from the absolute banger games in the S tier down to the absolute stinkiest games in the F tier and the do not play tier. The video has over 600 comments to it. I love all the feedback I got. I've read every single comment in here. But one thing that really stuck out to me was the amount of people who didn't want to see a subjective, opinionated tier list. They want to see purely what is the absolute best roguelike games to play. Now, to me, that's a pretty boring tier list, right? If I just search on YouTube, give me the best roguelike games, it's gonna be the exact same 10 games in every single tier list. And what I think I'm gonna do, let's do another action roguelike tier list, except with a little bit of a twist. We'll be ranking these solely on the reviews from Steam. That's right, this will not be a tier list based on what I think is the best and the worst. I'm gonna let you all decide what's the best and the worst based on Steam reviews. F is anything below 60 on the review score, D in the 60s, C in the 70s, B in the 80s, A in the 90s, but if it's a 96 or higher, we'll call that an S tier roguelike. The placement for the games are literally just everything below C is a no-name game that no one cares about, and then everything at the top of the list are all like the most popular game journalist level kind of games. I don't know how they got that from that tier list, but what I've decided to do is that I'm gonna split each tier into two separate games. One that is like pretty unknown, and then the other one will be a well-known one, something that has a lot of reviews on Steam. Let's go ahead and hop from the bottom of the tier list. In the F tier, with only 2 reviews, is Underzone. This is a game that you all definitely have not heard of, and you can clearly see with only 2 reviews on it. But this game is in the F tier for really one reason only, and that is that it is actually pretty boring to play. Let me at least give you how this game was supposed to work out. You're basically drilling underground to find survivors in a city that has been infested by aliens or something. Maybe they're just bugs, I have no idea. But in any case, you drill underground in this suit, you find survivors on a giant checkerboard. I assume it's procedurally generated. Each tile of the checkerboard is monsters or free space or it's survivors or some mix of the two. And that's it. That's the whole game. I've never seen anything get more sophisticated than this. The big premise of the monsters evolve by like adding new affixes to them. That's sort of interesting, but I never make it past the first level to keep wanting to play the game longer than that. So I may get the first evolution, but I'm still playing the exact same game, drilling into the next checkerboard, finding a survivor, killing a monster, getting out. That's the whole game. Never saw anything more interesting than that. So I would call this very much in the F tier. Not a lot of game here to be had. All right, moving out of the F tier and into the D. Boss Crushers is supposed to be a co-op game where you basically fight dungeons. It's, I guess, maybe MMO simulator, except the game is actually not playable. If you paid for this game at $15, you are actually not able to play it. So the reviews are 63% positive still, even though it should be in the F tier. The last comment was made in 2020 when it was playable. And then after that, it wasn't until 2023 where someone left an actual comment saying that the game is no longer playable. If I remember correctly, when I played this with a buddy of mine way back in the day, the game was basically not memorable. There weren't that many bosses, and every relic that you'd put on for the roguelike part, it was just like added damage or maybe some added missiles. Really nothing for us to make a busted build out of. So even if this was playable, I think I would still call this an F tier. My second game in the D tier, this game has 1,900 reviews, but still only 61% positive, even worse than the game you can't actually play, and that's called Anvil. Really cool cyborg ninjas or something. I forget the main story, but basically you're put inside of a suit. Humanity is basically done at this point, but it's your job to maybe find the vaults or something to save the rest of humanity. The premise and the look of this game I actually thought was really cool. I played it multiple times. During the early betas of it, it was actually fun fighting against aliens and making busted builds. That's something this game actually has. But now, it's mixed because of two things. In the reviews, people mention that the game has some kind of really bad spyware on it. Well, there's a mix. They call it abandonware and spyware at the same time. I guess there's some kind of kernel level spyware, Welbia, and X Hunter 1. The reviews say to stay clear of this game. Now, if you weren't worried about that, if you had no clue what that is and you tried to download the game, the main issue I have with it is that it's a pay-to-win roguelike game with a battle pass, a paid premium battle pass that actually helps you beat the roguelike. I took 1 second to find the last person to make a video on this game in the last like 3 years. And the first thing they showed in the video was the season pass, where the premium unlock is a worker bot that follows you and heals you in the run. I assume that means you do not have that as a regular player, or maybe you get that later on. But for a season pass holder, you can have healing in the run by paying $10 or whatever it is. That to me is already like an immediate red flag. This is still only in the D tier. I guess I could sort of agree with it. If you ignore the battle pass, it's probably D tier worthy. Before we move on into the C tier, I want to remind you all that hundreds of these games come out every single month. I believe year over year, the action roguelike and roguelike in general category is just exploding and doesn't seem to stop. Even AAA devs are getting in on the roguelike craze. If you want me to talk about those at all, feel free to let me know in the comments if any of those are worth looking into. But either way, let's hop into the next C tier games. Starting off with the lesser known one, called Shadow of the Depth. Now, I can tell you that title doesn't really roll off the tongue very well. This game is 70% on the dot positive with 432 reviews. So, I mean, there are people who actually genuinely enjoy this. The character design of the game, I don't mind it. I think it actually looks kind of good. It is a top-down action roguelike, though, and maybe that by itself may throw off a few people. You basically have your one character. It has like a couple of different kinds of attacks based on the weapon you have equipped. But the way how they designed the roguelike portion is that you augment the weapon's combo. For example, it might be attack, attack. Instead, you'll be doing attack, wait for a second, then attack again, and that might fire out frost blades or something like that. And it's kind of a cool system. I feel like this game requires you to dump in a lot of hours before you get to the customization, and I don't know if I really want to do that, because it didn't really hook me the way how I would hope it would. Looking at one of the commenters, they say that this is like Devil Slayer Rexasi at home, which is like a game that I've actually never played, but I think the reviews are pretty stellar, right? Yeah, Devil Slayer Rexasi is at 92% positive, with the same general kind of playstyle, where it's a top-down action roguelike, and I assume you buff the weapons, or maybe you find new weapons. I have no idea. I've never played this game before. But as far as I know, they're working on a sequel, and maybe that's because the game was actually very successful. Shadow of the Depth, despite its jankiness, it has like some kind of cool ideas in it that I actually did enjoy. But of course, as a roguelite, there's so many of these that come out all the time. You kind of have to really make something special before people really catch on and decide they want to play it. So yeah, I'll agree. C tier sounds about right for this. Next up, we have a game with 1,962 reviews, but it's only 72% positive, which I don't understand because I think this game's fantastic, and that is Orcs Must Die Death Trap. This is a full release title, not early access, done by the same devs who've done the very popular Orcs Must Die series. They decided to make a roguelite game where instead of it being a campaign, you hop into a run, you get your choice between 3 different maps to do, and then the game will add a modifier saying like the orcs are gonna have double the damage, traps are gonna cost double, exploders will spawn, environment will have rain, so will spawn water elementals. So it has like an actual good roguelike premise to it. And I gotta say, I already have 108 hours in this game. That is me telling you I actually enjoy it as family game night with my wife, my brother-in-law, and anyone else who wants to join us. So from what I could tell, the main reason why people don't like this game is purely because it's a roguelike. Every other Orcs Must Die, you can experiment on one map. You can do some like really weird setups that you don't think is gonna work until you get to the very end. You can spam the same traps and make like a giant contraption of just bounce pads if you really want to. Can you do that in Orcs Must Die Death Trap? Not really, because not only are there mods that might make the bounce trap a little bit less desirable, but because you're rotating through maps, a lot of those people feel like they don't really have room to experiment. They really have to try to win. And that's, you know, the basis of a roguelike is that if you lose the whole run. But eventually you can do that in this game. That's the weird part to me. I have had setups that were complete autopilot. I've had setups where I actually thought I was gonna lose. The barricade system where like you make the path that the orcs have to take, it's still very different because you have a set amount of barricades that you're allowed to put down, and you have to pay to get access to more of them in the single run. It's balance. I guess that's what it boils down to. There's some semblance of balance here, but once you start to really understand the game, you can still break it just like how you can with the regular. So even though this is in the C tier for a lot of people, I would at least call this game a B tier outside of like optimization and some bugs, which have mostly been worked on. Alright, now we're in the B tier. This one is called Critical Path. 86% positive. That's a big jump from the 71 we had earlier. Only 129 reviews. Critical Path is what happens if you make dead cells, except the dungeon is actually build your own dungeon. Don't think of it as like you're playing Sims 4 or something and you're actually like putting in the furniture and stuff like that. No, instead, you basically have a starting point and then a boss. And it's your job to make the path room by room to the boss. And the game will show you other rooms scattered all across, almost like a game board. But in any case, you're putting down the tiles to make a path to the boss. The tiles are anything from basic combat to a healing room to a treasure room to a shop. You can destroy tiles, you can re-roll tiles. It has a really cool system that actually makes you do the game that it came up with. As I was saying, the actual combat of the game is maybe a little bit closer to a Dead Cells. It's a 2D action platform roguelike. You have basic attacks, but then you can augment those attacks with different things you picked up. Maybe you'll hit both in front of you and behind you. Maybe enemies at farther range take more damage. There's probably like fire and poison and stuff like that. So it has, you know, basic combat that you can really get behind. But in my opinion, the main part about this game is building that dungeon and trying to make a good build out of going through each tile. A lot of the negative reviews I'm seeing are all about the game's combat. Either it feels too floaty or the dodge feels worthless. I've seen some comments about the bosses being too tanky. And I think that's because, as far as making your character more powerful, it's very one-dimensional, I'd say. Or perhaps it's very difficult to find out how you become overpowered in order to beat the boss in a, you know, decent amount of time. However, everyone loves the actual concept of building the rooms. That seems to be the strongest part of this game, is its premise. And sometimes that's really all it takes to get into the B tier, is to have a premise that actually works. That being said, the next B tier game, 82% positive with a whopping 1,958 reviews. The game that I really enjoyed, and that's Phantom Abyss. Phantom Abyss isn't an action roguelike how you would normally think of it. Instead, imagine a Tomb Raider-esque platforming game with traps and enemies that attack you, but you're not actually attacking anything. Your goal is to just get to the end, get the treasure, get as much money as you can along the way, and then get out while alive. The main game mode of this game has one specific dungeon that only one person's gonna get to the end. And at the end of that, the dungeon completely resets. There's asynchronous multiplayer. You'll see ghosts of other players who have tried to do that dungeon, but all of them are dead bodies in the normal game mode. So you can go further than all of them and learn from their mistakes. And where I see a lot of the negative reviews come from is that outside of that main game mode and the premise behind it, the campaign, I guess you can say, or the progression, how you get to do better in the roguelite game is you have to go through individual dungeons to unlock whips. And the whips have powers to them like slow fall, like healing when you go into waterfall, things of that nature. But to do those progression dungeons is so much less fun than doing the actual game mode. You also get currency to spend to level up your profile, and in there you'll get like dash goes farther, jumps higher, things of that nature. And it's not as cool as the original premise of here's a dungeon that only one person in the world's gonna beat. You could do that all day and probably really enjoy the game, probably even make it in the A tier, but then once you go down to progressing your character in the lesser dungeons, all of a sudden now it becomes a real chore. And that, as disappointing as it is, puts this game in the B tier. Before we hop in the A tier, I do want to thank you all for checking out this vid and the other tier lists we did. If you haven't checked that out, the link to it's in the description of this video. This idea of doing less roguelikes, but have them based purely on the Steam reviews, I think is a lot of fun. If you like it, hopefully if this video gets enough likes and subscriptions, I'll make this a regular thing that we do on the channel. Either way, let's move on to the A tier, starting off with a game that has only 369 reviews, but a whopping 90% positive score, and that is Paper Planet. Paper Planet is an action roguelike, but it's gonna be a little different. This is almost more akin to tower defense, except you are the tower that's in the middle of the map, and your goal is to make a busted build that will destroy anything that comes across the game. What makes it Paper Planet is that your tower is basically a planet. The game has multiple planets you can choose from, all with their own perks, and you put together an item combination of all of the equipment that you found in order to make the craziest looking bullets that you can come up with. And I don't believe the game has really any incompatible mods. I've seen some really cool setups that I've also done myself. I think the game's actually fantastic, well deserving of an A tier. People enjoy the challenge, people enjoy designing builds. I'm skimming through the reviews to try to find some of the negative ones. I would imagine it has something to do with like your combination was not as strong as you thought it was. Maybe there's no item description, so you didn't really know how the interactions were gonna occur. Or the game throws you something like very strong. It requires, even though it's a tower defense game, this game requires dodging, which is kind of weird. And maybe like you're so used to just blowing up everything that as soon as you have to actually dodge, it becomes an issue. So like ignoring all that, the game's definitely in the A tier in my opinion. And if you happen to have this game yourself, consider leaving it a review, since there's not that many reviews for this game at all. On the flip side, if we want to talk about a game with a lot of reviews, this is 12,600 reviews, 95% positive, so just 1 point away from making it into the S tier. You could be the commenter that moves it over the fence if you leave a review right now. This is RoboQuest, some people's favorite co-op first-person shooter roguelike game. I did not have this on my previous tier list, because not gonna lie, I only have like 2 hours of game time in this game. RoboQuest is one of the few FPS roguelike games where movement actually matters. I think most of the FPS roguelikes nowadays are simply like shoot as many bullets or as big of a bullet as possible, max out the damage, and then you just walk into a room and everything dies. And to be fair, I do think that that's fun, but on the flip side, some people do actually want to show off their skills with an FPS game while also making a strong build, and that's where RoboQuest comes in. The game has lots of different guns in it, has multiple characters. Each character has a secondary ability, so even though I never got this far in the game, supposedly some of the secondaries really make the characters very special. This game also seems to have a lot of secrets to it. The first time I tried to stream this, I had people in my chat telling me to like jump up into a corner to find a secret, go behind this wall to find the unlockable. There's like platforming puzzles and all kinds of weird stuff to it, so it's not just FPS shooter. The game actually has a lot of stuff to it. It was very hard for me to find a review that's like actually valid and negative. It seems like there's some multiplayer issues, some bugs. It looks like some people don't really like the roguelite part of this game or the loop itself, where, as I said, you're like making some kind of build even though you're doing the FPS part. I think the game is well deserving of an A tier. I'm gonna have to revisit this myself to really understand where I would put it. But right now, I don't see any reason why this is not in the A tier. Moving into the S tier games, I still want to give you all a game that's like a little bit lesser known and a game that's like very popular. So we'll start off with the lesser known one, and that is Star of Providence. This game did get a little bit of a push in front of everyone because it got a new publisher, but that still only got it up to 2,418 reviews. Of course, the game is at 96% positive. Fantastic score here. Imagine a bullet hell like Ikaruga or Toho, where there's a bunch of bullets on the screen. It's your job to like get through them, but you're going through a dungeon. So there's individual rooms like Binding of Isaac where they present you with monsters to be killed. It's your job to go through the bullet hell. Very well designed, very memorable kind of enemies. I dare say the best thing about this game isn't necessarily the bullet hell of it, but every monster and every encounter in the game is so well crafted that you're never gonna walk into a room and say like, oh, well, that room sucked. You'll like at least the idea behind it. You might die, you might get blown up, but in essence, it's still like a very fun experience the entire time. It was out for years, and then they got the publisher and worked on this big update. And I know that update added new characters, a bunch of balancing, new weapons, new relics, all that stuff. I have no idea because the game would be new to me. As far as my ranking of the game, I don't have any complaints about it because the game itself is so well contained that you really can't compare it to other stuff and say, I wish it did this. For example, the weapons in the game, it doesn't have infinite ammo. You might have to buy ammo, you might have to spin ammo to level up the weapon, but you probably will not have the weapon the entire time. It's just a means to get through the next boss or however long you can maintain it. The game is also skill-based. It rewards you for getting no hits, it rewards you for being fast, it rewards you for using bombs to clear out bullets or open up secret passageways. The game will challenge you to get through stuff on a timer. So the better you get at the game, the more rewarding the game is. And maybe like modern roguelikes don't really do that very often, so that might shy some people away. If you were to say that Isaac or Gungeon is better, I do feel like they are completely different games. I see people saying that the meta progression is really bad because it does become really expensive. As I said, some people complain about the ammo system, but for me, I honestly think I really like the game, and I would recommend it as something in the high A, possibly S tier. So that was our unknown S tier. Now I have to give you all the well-known S tier at 41,000 reviews, 96% positive. You all already know what it is. It's gotta be Dead Cells. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why make this video just to put Dead Cells in the S tier again, like we did with the last video? And the reason why is that I got multiple comments saying, how in the world do I have Dead Cells in the S tier? This must be a game journalist style tier list. This whole tier list is designed on the best reviewed games, and Dead Cells is a best reviewed game. The Roguevania genre, I think people akin more to Dead Cells at this point than they do to Rogue Legacy, which is probably like the originator of that concept. Dead Cells really set the bar of having an X number of biomes that you can go to, and then you're still trying to go through different difficulties. You're trying to get a busted build using all the items. You're getting blueprints to buy new items, spinning cells, do that. The weapons themselves feel very good. No weapon has zero identity. Everything has its place, whether it being like good or bad, irrelevant, I guess. Every item actually does feel at least somewhat unique. And then the bosses themselves, barring the first boss, Concierge, I would say is a boss that you don't mind seeing again the next time you play the game. So again, trying to get past all the meme negative reviews in here, and also the reviews who are now negative because the game stopped development. If you were to have Abandonware, a game that was left unfinished and the devs moved on, could that be a negative review? Absolutely. I guess some people would call this game unfinished and the devs moved on. But if we were to talk about purely the mechanics and gameplay of Dead Cells from a negative review standpoint, I did see some people that found the game boring, and I think that's because they probably died in the first two areas, saw the same monsters again on their next run, figured that there's nothing else to see here, and moved on. There were some people saying that some of the situations are a little bit unfair. I've even had someone leave a negative review saying that the graphics were bad. Now, I don't know what they're looking for. If they're looking for Last of Us 2, then yeah, okay, negative review, graphics suck. However, at 96% positive, this game is a massive success that I can't just say I want it in the S tier. Apparently, the reviewers on Steam agree with me. Now, before we go, I could have just left you all with an S tier, but to get like above 96, we're talking like 98 and higher, that requires something special. And I do have one game to give you all in this tier list that is a 98% positive with 1,383 reviews, so not that much, definitely not 40,000 worth. And that game is The Void Reigns Upon Her Heart. This is a game that I've done exactly one play of. It is a bullet hell. It is a roguelike. However, it's a boss rush bullet hell roguelike. The dev has in here probably over 100 bosses, many of which have different variations to them. Even though it's a bullet hell, you're getting power-ups that actually feel like you are changing your gameplay in the bullet hell itself. It has different unlocks that, for example, a boss may have a piece of armor to break off, almost like you're playing Monster Hunter World. And everyone gives this game raving reviews. Unfortunately, with a name like The Void Reigns Upon Her Heart and a banner on Steam that doesn't give you any idea of what kind of game this might be, I dare say that if anyone even stumbles upon this, they'll probably pass by. Almost think of YouTube. Think about all the thumbnails that you see every single day that you scroll by. The Void Reigns Upon Her Heart is definitely one of those games where the thumbnail and title probably suck. But if you were to click into it, you'd be well welcomed with some of the best rated gameplay on Steam, period. The only issue there seems to be with Void Reigns Upon Their Heart is the writing for some people. Now, I think the dev actually did try to do something with the writing. Essentially, you're an alien and you're trying to love other creatures. Like, love is a major plot point in the entire game. However, I think a lot of people are just spamming the skip button to get through that. I think if you really immerse yourself in the game, it's really a good story overall. But if that is not a deal breaker for you, you can just skip it entirely and you will have a 98% positive game. I, for one, definitely want to play more of Void Reigns. I think it's a fantastic game. I agree on the 98% positive rating. The only complaint I have about the game is that I lose sometimes. And you can't give it a negative review because of a skill issue, even though some of you all seem to say differently when it comes to tier lists. Oh, I can't. As boring as watching my beard hair. Watching grass grow. Wow. They said they're bending the rules of roguelites. We'll be the judge of that. Okay, that was actually sick. I gotta go back in. I know doing a tier list for roguelite games is a fun thing to do, and maybe you enjoyed it so much that you subscribed to this channel and you left a like on the video. Maybe you even left a comment telling me which game you want to see next on the roguelite tier list. Thanks for checking out the video, and I'll catch you next time.